Welcome to the new sound of online radio. Welcome to the sound of Universal Broadcasting Network. 'Cause you make me feel like I've been locked out of hell. A mix of today's hits and hard-to-find favorites, combined with the most entertaining and intriguing talk anywhere. This is your sound. This is the sound of Universal Broadcasting Network at upnradio.com.
She's passionate about telling stories of amazing women who are rocking the world and empowering women to live, love, and thrive. Here's your host, Katherine Gray.
Welcome, everybody. Welcome to Live, Love, Thrive Women's Empowerment Hour, brought to you by 360 Karma. We hope you visited the website and also our Facebook, and of course, joined our conversation on Instagram and Twitter at My360Karma. Well, you know, every week we feature incredible women. Today we have on recovery advocate Susan Bowling. Please give a warm welcome to Susan. Hi, Susan. How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Good.
Thank you. How are you?
Good. I'm so glad to have you. I know a while back you'd taken my podcast workshop, and
I did.
I look forward to at some point seeing your show. I
one
know
of
it's
these-
coming. I know it's in the
coming.
works.
It's a lot of work.
It
But
is a
yeah,
lot of work.
It is a lot of work. My hat's off to you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. It takes a village. I've got a great team around me. We've got Kurt back there on the board, and Shannon, who helps us with our marketing, and Ash and so forth. So, you know, I always say, you know, let people do what's their gift. You know, I'm not really like that prolific at running a board or social media, but, you know, I do love doing the show, and it's wonderful to, you know, that everybody that does what they love, right? Don't you agree? And I know you're doing what you love.
It's absolutely true.
Yeah, and we're going to talk
absolutely
about
true.
your path to being a recovery advocate and what that exactly means, because some people might not even know what a recovery advocate is. But it's a really cool niche, and you had an interesting journey. So we're going to talk about how you got there. But just like up front, I want people to know that, you know, there are people of all socioeconomic statuses that have problems with addiction, whether it's alcohol or drugs, and could easily end up in court being filed with DUI or whatever.
Right.
And you are an advocate for them.
That's true.
And there are people that might have a son, a daughter, a wife, you know, a sister that need somebody to advocate for them. Right. And because of your background and your journey, you decided to help those people. So we're going to talk about that. But first, I want to talk about how you got there. So you were born in Miami?
I was born in Florida, born in Tampa, but raised in Miami.
And raised in Miami, yeah. I spent many years there myself, yeah.
Great time
I
there.
know. I wish we'd crossed paths then, yeah. And you were sharing with me that you left there when you were a teenager, was it? Or
I think I was 19,
17?
turning 20,
19,
actually. I'd
okay.
done a couple of years of college there and then came here.
Yeah. And the reason you left there and came to the West Coast was...
You know, I was a gay woman in a time that was, it was not as safe to be a gay woman as it is today.
Right.
Those
I
were-
remember you said it was around the time of Anita Bryant in Miami.
Absolutely. In my hometown.
Oh, my.
Yeah.
I couldn't imagine being in Miami while Anita Bryant was throwing the gays under the bus.
Exactly.
For you millennials, look it up.
Yeah, look it up. It was a very hard time.
It was a hard time.
A really hard time.
And so your parents would not have taken well to that.
No, I mean, eventually, yes.
Yeah.
And very supportive, and, you know, the whole world began to change.
Yeah.
And certainly my family on a personal level. But initially, you know, there was resistance. There was, of course, they would want me not to have a life that would be difficult, so they tried to kind of engineer that
Or that they
away.
thought would be difficult.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And so this was in the 90s? Or
This
80s?
is the 80s.
80s.
Yeah, like
And
1980.
So we have to remember that in the 80s, there weren't even any gay people on television, like in roles on television, openly gay people.
No.
Like millennials, can you imagine that?
Yeah.
No TV show, no Will and Grace, no Ellen DeGeneres. There was no shows with gay people. It was as though we didn't exist.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And so I think it was in the late 80s, 90s that we began, mainly in the 90s, to see gay characters. True. And it's you know, something that we don't take for granted.
No, I you know, we can't have lived as many years as we have and not seen like the evolution of this. It went from, constant oppression to, to the extent of Anita Bryant to, and all that she was about, to the Briggs Amendment. Remember that? Gay people shouldn't be employed in schools and places like that, to the HIV crisis,
right?
Where we lost a generation of our friends.
Yes, that was tough. That was tough.
Very powerful.
So, did you, when you moved to California, did you feel a freedom to be yourself? Was it better here?
Yeah. It was a more established community.
Yeah.
And so it was both.
Was it West Hollywood or where?
Yeah, I moved into West Hollywood.
Yeah. West Hollywood's still one of the gayest cities in the country.
Back then, it wasn't even a city.
Yeah.
And so I just wanted to find my community so that I could be comfortable to find my identity within that.
Right.
Yeah.
So you had shared with me that you came here to go to film school.
Yeah, initially.
And told your parents on that premise. And oddly enough, you never got there, but you did end up in the industry.
Yeah. I wanted to wait a year so that I could have residency and the tuition would be lower. And in that year, I just started working a lot. And then I was working so much that I really
And you started working at the Academy, right?
Yeah, my first job was the Academy of Motion Pictures. And I worked
that's
in
a pretty cool
department.
first job.
Yeah, it was a great gig.
You were meant to be here.
It was a great gig, and I went on through different levels of, different types of work within the industry.
And you worked for some pretty major studios as a story editor.
Yes.
Let's tell people what a story editor does, because you did this for like 10 years, and I know you really enjoyed it, and you worked for big companies like TriStar and
I worked
others.
for producers that had deals at these studios, Warner Brothers and TriStar. A story editor is somebody who goes out and finds interesting properties that could be developed into a good movie. In
like
this
a
case.
book, a screenplay.
Right, a play, a story. These days, we're getting them out of TV articles, or newspaper articles. And
I'm
things,
telling you, as this political situation unfolds, I'm seeing a really unbelievable movie coming.
Yeah. We don't know if it's comedy or tragedy yet.
I know. I think a little of both. Thank God for Stephen Colbert and Murphy Brown and Candace Bergen putting a little humor into it all. So when you say you'd go out and get screenplays and or books or whatever for movie deals, how does one do that? I'm just so curious. Like,
you read a lot.
Yeah.
You read books before they're published. Did
you constantly have people saying, "Oh, I have a book," and
that, or you just kind of start looking in journals that are publishing good writers and new writers, and you go to plays and you do things like that. In that way, of course, it was a great gig.
Yeah.
It was by far of that, working in that industry, my favorite edge of it. So,
that sounds fascinating.
Yeah, it was good.
So then, what took you out of that? I know you made a move to Santa Barbara, and you ended up having a child.
I did.
Yeah.
Yeah, my daughter was the first child conceived of artificial insemination from 2 gay parents.
Oh my gosh. Wow. So you made history.
I made some history.
Yeah.
And my daughter's Blaze. She'll be 32 this month in a couple of weeks. And she's amazing.
She'd have to be amazing. She's a piece of groundbreaking history.
And she, so I really wanted to raise her in a place that was nurturing and quiet and private at that time. And so we started in Santa Barbara for a number of years. I was in a relationship with someone who wanted to be up there as well. And then in 1996, I moved back to Los Angeles and started, more of a focus first in my own addiction.
Right. And so then, did that happen in Santa Barbara or in LA that you actually had your own addiction issues?
It started in Los Angeles. And
Was it because of your breakup or?
No, there was a number of things. I think I don't know that there was one single cause. Like, I'm the child of an alcoholic, but my father was recovered for the last 20 years of his life, and my
but
entire
I think if you have the
adulthood,
gene, it runs in the family.
They say that.
Yeah.
But
do you believe that?
They may eventually find and isolate this gene, and perhaps there's that, biological setup. But I think what it is that when children grow up and I'm not speaking just to myself because I had a very stable household despite this, but when children grow up in a household that has addiction, it's not that looks so attractive, because often you'll find kids grow up and go, yeah, no way.
Yeah.
I'm never going to do that.
I've seen that,
right?
yeah. Mm-hmm.
And some of the kids in the family will be like, no way. Well, everybody will say no way, and one or two of the kids may go on and have addiction anyway.
Right.
And so we have to look at what that is. And I believe, and what I've been taught, is that it's not that looks so attractive to a child. It's that they're not seeing all the healthy coping mechanisms that you would see in a house that didn't have addiction.
I see.
So when all they see modeled for them is, when we celebrate, I use. When I'm mad, I use. When when I'm bored, I use.
Right.
Then it's the absence of the positive things.
Right.
It's the absence of the diversity of experience.
Right. So you think it could be lifestyle, it could be genes, or it could be a combination.
Yeah, it's what's modeled for people.
Right.
You know?
Right.
And
what we learn, what we see, yeah,
what we observe about how other people handle their lives.
So, I mean, you really had quite a rough road that you shared. Got hooked on crystal meth, which today is such a huge problem in this country, bigger than ever, I think. Right?
It's definitely having a resurgence, but today, right now, I don't know if you're aware of this, and I'm not even sure our viewers are, because it continues to surprise people. The number one cause of death in the United States for a person under the age of 55 is drug overdose.
Wow.
It's the number one cause of death.
Oh, my gosh.
And it's been escalating for years and years and years. Mm-hmm. And so for the last 2 years, we've had this enormous, the last several years, an enormous loss, but that it's the number one cause of death in the United States.
Wow.
Is extraordinary.
Yeah, that is.
We think gun deaths, we think, we think cancer, we think, for a while, I do a lot of educational presentations in colleges and with mental health professionals. Mm-hmm. And, I've been doing these presentations for years. And each year it'd be like, well, it's the number one cause of accidental death. Well, it's, more than gun accidents. Certainly we're more than automobile accidents now. And now it just is,
it's
period.
It's just number one, yeah.
It keeps escalating.
Wow. That is really frightening.
Yeah.
Even more the reason that we need more people doing what you're doing, which is not just advocating after somebody has an addiction, but you actually help people with addictions. And let's talk about how you switch from being an addict into helping people. So, I mean, you yourself had been arrested, homeless, all of these things that happen to people that do get addicted, especially to something as strong as crystal meth. But then you also had times where you were functioning addict, going to work, which a lot of people do, and functioning, but still struggling with it. So you've kind of experienced the whole gamut. So that when somebody is talking to you that is an addict, not only do you understand where they're coming from, but you understand how they think, how they feel, all of those things that, someone who hasn't been an addict could never relate to. So it's a wonderful gift that you've been down that road, recovered, and that you're giving back. And that's why I'm so happy to have you on today, because addiction, like you said, is just so prevalent. Right. And I know that we're going to have listeners who either have an issue or know someone that has an issue, a loved one or a friend. Right. And I'm hoping that they'll walk away with some resources and information that will be helpful.
Right.
So that's my goal today. Yeah. So first of all, let's say someone's husband gets a DUI, or their kid is arrested for stealing because they're trying to get money for drugs or whatever. People usually find you, Recovery
you can find me through
Advocate.com.
RecoveryAdvocate.com, or just my name, SusanBowling.com.
SusanBowling.com. And normally that's how people reach you, is like a family member will reach out, or a referral from a friend. Right. And you will actually go into court and advocate for them. And what you've explained to me that means is that, let's say, if they didn't have an advocate, they might be put in jail. But you're kind of like a private probation officer, right?
Yeah. Yes, and yes.
So to speak.
So to speak. That would be one way to look at a portion of the job. Yeah. So I do different types of work. But when we're speaking about advocacy for court-referred people, somebody's arrested. If it's a first-time DUI, that's very black and white. You know, they'll hire an attorney or they'll work with a public defender, and it's already determined with DUI what the penalties are going to be.
Consequences,
the consequences. I get hired on cases that are a little more tricky often because
maybe it's the third DUI, something like that. Yeah.
It could be that, or it could be, a lot of crimes that are really addiction driven don't look that way on paper.
Right.
Very few people are going to be caught with drugs. They're mostly caught doing the things to get the drugs.
Right.
And so on paper it will look like a robbery or a burglary or those kinds of crimes. So part of my work will be in looking at how serious that, an attorney will bring me on. I get a lot of referrals from criminal defense attorneys. So they'll bring me in on a case that looks like this person is facing a lot of time. And I'll do an interview and find out what are the full spectrum of need here. So the judge is going to want, the DA is going to want a very long treatment episode. Well, right there we've got a problem because funding treatment is very difficult.
Right.
If everybody in the United States who wanted to go into treatment today decided today's the day, we don't have near enough beds.
Right.
And we don't have the ability, we don't have the infrastructure built.
Right.
Despite it being the number one cause of death.
Right, because the federal government doesn't put it as a priority, right?
It's been years of neglect.
Right.
It's been years of neglect. So what I'll try to do is I'll look at a person's funding. Do they have private health care insurance? Well, that'll buy a little bit of time in treatment, but like private health care insurance is only going to pay for a short detox and then straight into outpatient. Well, if you're looking at a serious crime, the DA and the judge are going to want something like, I've had judges ask for like 3 years of treatment. If you can get, I would have put him in prison for 3 years. I went 3. Well, that's not really possible.
Right.
It just doesn't exist.
Right.
But what I can do is try to build a treatment plan by exhausting the person's benefits, whether they're private or publicly funded. Medi-Cal in California now covers residential treatment. We're in our second year of this. That's brand new.
Wow.
We're the only state in the country that.
Oh my gosh! Why don't they do that in these Midwest states that have such an issue?
It's part of the Affordable Care Act. It was something Obama implemented, and we're kind of a test case, which the idea was California would roll this out.
Right.
All the counties would jump on board, and the funding would change, and then the rest of the nation would take on. But
and so all these Midwest states that are red and don't want the Obama or Affordable Care Act don't even realize probably, like our conversation is covering, that this could have been implemented in their states to help cover this addiction crisis that they're having.
It still can.
Yeah.
And, Medi-Cal, which is what we call Medicaid. In other states, it's called Medicaid.
Is this for older?
No, that's Medicare.
Oh, right.
So this brings it to people that don't have health insurance. They don't earn enough money to be able to afford a policy or whatever it is. And they're eligible for Medi-Cal, and we can put somebody into treatment for up to 5 months in a year. So that's
so you'll go to the
extraordinary.
Judge and you'll say, we can get them a year.
Let me build this. I may pop them out of that system and move them into another program. I'll bring in mental health services and where.
And they'll be accountable to you.
Exactly. This is where, when we say private probation, that was just one of the attorneys I work with described that, and I was like, oh yeah, that does work,
I think that's a good analogy.
Yeah. Basically, I'm going to monitor that person in treatment, and if they leave early, I immediately inform the court. And so the court feels that they're going to know within, 72 hours max, that's if it happens on a weekend, that this person actually walked out of treatment.
So let me ask you this. How often do they drop out and you have to call the court? Is it more that they stick with you and it works out, or is it more that they drop out and you have to call the court?
I have a diversity of clientele. It can go either way. So I have to say, and it's just the luck of the draw, that most of the people that I put in treatment, I'm on them. And I take a lot of time to explain to them what the consequences are. And one of the first things I say to somebody as we're driving, usually from jail to the treatment center, is you're going to have times where you're going to be impatient and impulsive and more acting out of your addiction than any place else. And you may walk out of here, or you may break enough rules that you're going to be asked to leave. The only thing that could be worse than that is if you don't call me. If you call me, I can get you into another program in the time frame that I have to inform the court. I'm going to tell the judge that you had to leave this program and why, but it's much better to say, but she immediately recognized their problems, and requested immediate help, and this person is in this such and such program.
Right.
So you get to control what that notification looks like.
Right.
If you stay calm.
Right.
So.
You are just, the work you do is amazing. There needs to be more of you. Yeah. I mean, I know there's some, but there needs to be more. I know you do other work than the advocacy, so let's talk a little bit about that. And what do you call that? I know
harm reduction.
Harm reduction. What does that mean?
I'm a harm reduction coach, and I've started doing this work in the last few years. So you have to understand, from working with people in incarceration and trying to give people alternatives to incarceration, I'm seeing people who are paying usually a very big price. For example, in the United States, there's more people incarcerated for marijuana-related laws than all violent crimes combined.
Are you kidding?
Yeah,
So more people are in jail for like marijuana than they are for.
There are more arrests
robbery,
for marijuana.
Murder.
Oh, absolutely. And then just outside of marijuana, if we just go to all other drugs, it's
so
huge.
Now that we're legalizing it, will that make a big impact on our prison population?
California has legalized it.
Yeah.
And other states have followed, both medicinally and otherwise. But the federal government still puts marijuana up on Schedule 1, which is the highest penalty. So it's alongside LSD and heroin.
Why is that? And why haven't they changed it?
Again, it's years of neglect. It's years of just say no being the response to the drug problem. When you just say no, you lose an opportunity to really give people valuable information they need. People are going to use anyway.
Right.
So harm reduction is a principle of taking something that is dangerous and trying to bring some safety underneath it.
Right.
So I've started working with people outside of the court system in another aspect of my work, where people may be drinking or using or smoking, especially with the legalization of marijuana. It's become much more prominent, and people of all ages are doing it more than they would otherwise.
And they could still be arrested for it?
No. Well, it really depends. It depends
if they're flying somewhere.
You certainly don't want to fly into another state with it. Right. But in California, you're able to grow up if you're 21 and over. You're able to grow up to 6 plants. You're able to have up to an ounce on you at any given time of flower, right?
But you can't fly to another state and then maybe be arrested and slapped on a federal charge.
And it's a federal crime. It's why at our dispensaries, the people, it's always a cash transaction. They can't have a bank because the bank is federally regulated. On school campuses, I do a lot of work with college students. They can't smoke on campus even if they're over 21 because those are federally funded programs.
Oh, how interesting.
So
I didn't even know that.
It's this disparity, right? But my work, I'm looking to work with people where they haven't torched their lives. They're not committing crimes. It hasn't spun out of control. I really want to work with people earlier, people who are beginning to experience some loss or chaos in their lives because they're like waking up and smoking first thing in the morning. And I got a good preview to this work basically by working with so many college kids. Like if I turned to every college kid I worked with and I was like, really, you smoke or you use? Oh yeah, well no, you got to stop that. Let me put you in treatment. I would have maybe a half a session with people and that would be it. These are people that are young generally and they don't see their life as something that they're going to quit entirely, but they do need to create a conversation around, okay, wait a minute, addiction builds through compulsion.
Right.
So we need to build some muscle around not using as much. Right. And I'll usually ask somebody, what are the most important times you're drinking or using? And they'll name it through the day, and I'll try to keep those intact if I can. And I try to disrupt the process and say, okay, I'm going to ask you not to smoke first thing in the morning, but instead to get up, eat, do these things. What are some things that you're ignoring that are kind of worrying you that you need to address? Let's put a couple of those goals in. Bam, now I want you to smoke and know that you've gotten some things done already today.
Right.
And move on.
Right.
And it's the same work. I'm just coming in through a different door.
Yeah.
And I'm getting in earlier and being able to say to people, okay, what's your eating like? What's your sleeping like? Let's regulate your sleep.
Right.
Let's get you getting up more or less at the same. I want people to naturally have as much energy every day as the day before and the day following. So they know what they're
playing
with.
I do know friends that have said that smoke all the time, that they don't have the energy, they're lethargic, and So recoveryadvocate.com is where they can find you, or susanbowling.com, BOWLING.
Just like the game.
Just like the game. And if somebody is out there, they have an addiction, or they have a friend or a family member with an addiction, they should reach out to you and get some information, get some guidance. That's what you're here for. That's your gift you're giving back to the world to make the world a better place. And,
Absolutely.
I love what you're doing.
Thank you.
We need more of you.
Thank you. Thank you.
So thank you so much for tuning in today. Thank you, Susan, for being on. Be sure to visit her website, susanbowling.com or recoveryadvocate.com. We hope that you are making it a great day, and that you tune in next week on Wednesday. We'll have another amazing guest. Thanks a lot. Make it a great day. Hugs and happiness. Bye-bye.